G'day everyone, how are we all doing? I hope we're all doing well. I know I've been a bit infrequent with the uploads recently, but I just don't want to spit out bullshit for the sake of bullshit. But today, we're going to be talking about all the traps in Saw X, and I'm going to be ranking them from the worst to the best. Now, this is my personal opinion. There are about 8 traps in Saw X, from my memory at least, and you know, I even fact-checked that online. But at the same time, this is my list. This is my opinion, similar to the Saw movie ranking from the entire series that I did only a couple days ago. This is my personal opinion, where it is based on my thoughts, my personal experience, and the overall impact these traps had. I don't exactly have a personal criteria for it, maybe stuff in regards to gore, the trial itself, the significance. I'm not going to be ranking them based on difficulty. That would be a completely different list for a completely different video. And there are a few of these traps that would be very high up on the list in regards to most difficult, because there are 2 traps from what I can tell that feel either impossible or, well, one person has to die, kind of, where there isn't really a fair chance at survival. But I'll talk about that later in this video. This is my personal list. This is my personal ranking of which ones was my least favorite and which ones were my favorite. I will say this much. There wasn't exactly a single trap I didn't like in this movie. There was maybe 1 or 2 where I'm like, it didn't leave much of an impact. But the rest are great in this movie for one reason or other. There's one sort of high up on the list, which I don't know if people will agree with me on it, but we'll discuss it when the time comes. This will also include spoilers to Saw X. I know I've got to get on and do that Saw X spoiler review, don't worry. I just want to see the movie one more time to finalize my notes before I actually do that video. I will be doing that this week. Don't worry guys, it's coming. I will be doing it. It's happening where I can give a proper in-depth perspective in regards to my overall thoughts on the traps, the movie itself, the characterization, the story, everything. I just want to see it one more time where I can finalize my notes and my checklist and everything before I provide that video. But we're going to jump right into this with my personal ranking. As I said, this is your warning. If you haven't seen Saw X yet, this will contain some spoilers for all the traps in the movie, and I'll also be discussing why certain traps are either impossible or why they are very possible. So starting off at number 8, we're going to have what has been known as the Disembowelment Trap. This one features Henry, who is the guy who essentially directed John in the direction of this medical treatment. This miracle treatment with the Peterson Foundation. He was a fellow cancer patient that was at the support groups and everything in the movie, of which, you know, he had a scar. He had stage 4 pancreatic cancer, until it is revealed at the very end of the movie in the mid-credits scene where, spoilers, by the way, our favorite Terminator detective, Detective Mark Hoffman, returns for a trap inside of the classic iconic bathroom from Saw 1, Saw 2, Saw 7, you name it. This is a trap where it is essentially revealed where he doesn't have the scar on his stomach anymore, and that this was in fact a scam from him, and he was a part of the whole ordeal to scam people in regards to thinking that they got a chance at life, giving them false hope, and then, you know, conning them out of a fuckload of money. Now, here, the reason why this trap is at the very bottom, because it's a very cool concept. A guy, he's chained up, and then he has this device on his chest, of which will slowly cut into his stomach, seemingly disemboweling him. It has, what, 6 or 7 razor blades on it, or scalpels, I should say, and they are just rotating that are going to cut through his belly, and then disembowel him accordingly. The reason why this one's at the very bottom is, 1, we don't even get to see an end result. The movie cuts to black before we see the trap even really go into action. We see the trap get activated, we get a really janky... This after credits scene almost feels like an afterthought, even though it wasn't. It just feels stylistically, from how it's shot, from how it's directed, from the type of editing it has. It just feels very out of left field for the rest of the movie. I still like the mid-credits scene, don't get me wrong, and it opens up many possibilities for future Saw movies. But at the same time, it does still provide a lot of problems in regards to the trap itself, because we never actually get to see the final ending product of it, whether he survived, whether he died. I remember seeing a post or something that the actor who plays Henry may return in a Saw 11 or something like that. I don't fucking know. I can't exactly remember what the tweet said, so I'm not really going to talk about it, but there is a possibility that he's in talk to return. We might get it then. Who knows? It might be the opening trap of that movie. But at the same time, it doesn't exactly seem like Henry has a fair chance here either. He's got the device on him, and it started, but he's shackled by both of his hands. What in the fuck is he meant to do here? His hands aren't free, they're sort of there. It doesn't seem like there's any other part of his test that is really in play here for him to get out and survive and to achieve his task. It just seems very impossible, if that makes sense, due to the circumstances and what we've seen. Not to mention, we don't even know what the test was. There wasn't a tape. Yeah, we know that he's there because he ended up, conning Jigsaw and that he lied about his stage 4 pancreatic cancer and the miracle, treatment that happened. But at the same time, we also don't know exactly what his test is, what he has to achieve to survive, and also the means of surviving either. Coming in at number 7 is going to be the gas chamber. The gas chamber in concept is a really fun idea for a saw trap, and it is a race against the clock, act fast or die. My biggest problem with this trap, because it has Cecilia Peterson and Peter Sears in this trap, where they sort of have to fight against each other to survive. They're essentially in a gigantic iron lung, where they have to stick their head through this hole in the wall to be able to get oxygen, and it's fight to see which one will survive. One will live, one will die, and it goes back to what Amanda was saying to Cecilia not too long ago, maybe 5 minutes prior, that he will betray, or was it John that said it? I don't remember. But they said to Peter that she will stab you in the back one day. She will betray you. You just don't see it yet. And I understand that in concept, but for the entire movie, most of the traps were very beatable, very lenient in regards to the time that is provided. Everyone had a task that they had to achieve, and everyone could achieve it fairly. But this trap, however, feels entirely different because it goes against what the movie was as a whole, where everyone had a fair chance, it was singular, it really sets someone up to die. And the entire movie, we see a side of Jigsaw that is compassionate, very caring, very nurturing, and does appreciate life itself, where he always gives them a fair chance, and if they are successful, he will call the police, or not the police, but the, necessary medical services to tend to their wounds. He will even tend to them himself. But the problem is that this trap, one, in the grand scheme of what we saw throughout the entire movie, this one feels incredibly boring. Like, concept is great, but the overall effectiveness just isn't there. But at the same time, I also feel that it playing towards the twist does have a bit of a disadvantage. Like, I like the twist in this movie. It's just whenever a trap plays towards the twist, and that's seemingly the only reason the trap is there, just doesn't feel like it works entirely, because it just doesn't feel thought out, in the sense of, especially, one has to live and one has to die. Only one can survive. If this was like Saw 6, that would make sense and I'd be more lenient. But because this is Saw 10, where everything else is singular per trap with one person, and everyone is provided a very fair chance from time and the test itself, what the steps that are required to do it, it just feels like a massive slap in the face, and almost as if they didn't really think, oh fuck, this is the era of Jigsaw we are in. Why aren't we continuing on with that? I don't know, it's just sort of not really memorable and just feels like it goes against every other trap and the morals and the setting that they all set out as a precedence, almost. Coming in at number 6 is going to be the Bloodboarder. Waterboarding. Bloodboarding. Such a silly line, I love it, it's so goofy. The Bloodboarding Trap sees two people, one of them actually being Jigsaw himself. Jigsaw and this young boy named Carlos is thrown into the Bloodboarding Trap. It is a trap of John's own making, but after being tricked by Peter Sears and Cecilia Peterson, they are thrown into it. We seemingly are to believe that Amanda and John are going to pin it against each other, but it is actually the fact that Cecilia is a cold-blooded, a cold-hearted little bitch, and goes outside to where Carlos is just kicking a soccer ball against, yes, it's soccer, by the way, a soccer ball against a wall, and puts him in the trap with John. Why? You little bitch. So unnecessary. Now, this goes back to what I said before. It's mainly the fact that this plays towards nothing but a twist, and it's a massive being unobservant on the side of Peter and Cecilia. They don't realize until they're in the room where the gas chamber trap actually happens, where they're like, oh, fuck, there were meant to be two people there. Why were you chained up to it only? Where was the second person? What is the test? And then they activate the gas chamber trap because they're fucking idiots. But, this trap is cool. I think it's actually a really interesting concept, how they have to pull the lever. One of them, no holla, where if one of them pulls it, it tilts on their end, or if you push it, it tilts towards the other person, where it will waterboard them, bloodboard them, and blood's thick, it's tilting them like this on like a 45-degree angle, so the blood is actually pouring down their nostrils and over their mouth. There's really no way to turn your head like this or that to really, find a way to breathe and gain oxygen to survive. I think that in concept, this is a really interesting trap, and it is a survival of the fittest. It is an endurance match, essentially. And it does provide a really awesome narrative beat towards John Kramer himself, where it does show how compassionate he is, how he does have morals. He refuses to hurt or kill children. That, well, no, Daniel Matthews really wasn't a child. He was 17, but he was bordering on adulthood. But I digress. He won't hurt children. It really pins on the relationship that John and Carlos built really early in the movie, where he puts his engineering skills into perspective and fixes his bike. It shows the good parent that John would have been, that he would have done anything. From this trap's perspective, it shows us that he would have done anything to protect Gideon if Gideon didn't unfortunately pass away. It shows the parent he would have been if Gideon would have been bored and maybe the different path he would have gone on in life. Unfortunately, however, the trap doesn't leave an everlasting effect as a whole, but I don't think it was trying to. I think it was more or less trying to pin home, the twist, which again is an issue for me personally, but overall, a narrative perspective, this is a very unique trap. In the sense of we've never seen Jigsaw in a trap of his own making, essentially, and here we get to see that finally, but it was a part of his plan. He kind of does that little subvert expectation thing again, where you gotta believe that he predicted the human mind. Overall, it's not a bad trap, it's just that it is more narrative focused as a trap is, concerned than anything else. Coming in at number 5, pretty much right in the middle, is going to be the eye vacuum. The reason this trap isn't higher, because I think it's actually a really cool concept and a really cool trap. It's surprisingly easy to survive depending on if you hesitate or not. Essentially, the janitor at the hospital where John was initially seeking treatment, he was pickpocketing, he was stealing from patients, and he has a noble job as a custodian at the hospital. Your job as a custodian, sterilizing and sanitizing the hospital, is a noble one. It's a cool concept. The trap tape is really good. Like, the dialogue is actually really fucking awesome. I think using the idea of the watch that the janitor was trying to steal as the timer is a really cool idea and shows like a middle finger to what he was doing and why he is really here. Essentially, he's going to turn 5 dials to break his fingers one by one on his right hand, otherwise his eyes will be sucked out through vacuum tubes. He's a janitor, makes sense for the vacuums, and the guy that he was stealing these belongings being a ring as well as a, a watch, it makes sense too, considering that when we actually see the patient that he was stealing from, he's got his fingers in little slings. His fingers were broken. The reason why this isn't higher, because I think the end result is awesome. Seeing the eyes get sucked out, him breaking his fingers, the race against the clock in 60 seconds is really, really cool. In regards to everything else, however, the reason why this isn't higher, and the only reason, is because it is a narrative-based trap once again, and that's the fact that this trap is not real. Let me explain. If you haven't seen the movie yet, you wouldn't know, but this trap essentially takes place in John's mind. He sees the guy stealing the belongings, he looks at the vacuum, he looks at the slings on the patient's fingers, and he gets the idea, and we see it take place. Slings for patient, vacuums for the, the janitor, to suck out the eyeballs. I think it's actually a really cool idea that we get to see a trap play out from the perspective of John's mind. It shows his ideology and also his psyche. How it actually shows him getting the idea for his trap is really cool, and in concept, a really fascinating progression for the narrative. Never before have we really gotten a look into John's psyche and how his brain works. And here we get to see that in full force, and I think it is a really fascinating, really interesting concept that was until now unexplored territory. Again, the only reason it's not higher is because it's a dream sequence, essentially. But it does it in a way that is better than the Pain Train from Saw 7, because it's not a fake out. It's used from a narrative perspective to build the narrative, to build the characters, to develop and enhance the character of John Kramer. I think it's really good. I think it works really well. It's just the fact that this isn't a real trap that has it sitting right in the middle for me. Now, every trap onwards, being number 4 of my list up to number 1, I actually love every single one of these traps. I think they are all really good. It was really hard to place them. I just do have 2 personal favorites and 2 that fit slightly below. For me, at number 4, I have the radiation trap, which features Gabriella, who is a drug addict, and that alone provides a lot of narrative base in regards to Amanda and Gabriella, which I'll talk about in the spoiler review when I eventually post that. But at the same time, this trap sees Gabriella, who is chained by her left arm and her right leg, and is hoisted up into the air and placed in front of a radiation machine, which is usually used to do brain scans or x-rays. It is overexposed and it is incredibly concentrated, so after each passing second, she is subjected to more radiation to achieve her task and to achieve her test in regards to being able to survive. What she has to do is grab what seems to be a mallet or a sledgehammer that is hoisted above her as well after she is lifted up, and break her left arm and her right leg one by one. With each smashing hit, it allows her to slip out of her shackles, but just know that the concentrated radiation gets stronger and stronger with each passing second and does up to 5 stages. I feel like this is a very fair trap, first of all, because each section of the radiation. Like, it has 5 stages, and each stage seems to have roughly around about a 45 second to 1 minute time frame. And after each minute and after each 45 seconds, whichever one it is, I actually need to time it when I go see the movie next. It would be nice to know. She'll get weaker and weaker, so she does have to act fast. Cecilia, being the bitch that she is, and this was a part of her plan so she didn't have to share as much of the money, tells Gabriella to break her right leg first. And she does decide to do that because it's like, you'll swing out of the way. The machine does move, however, as a massive fuck you, and Gabriella is the most realistic character in this entire movie regarding her reactions. When Billy comes up for the tape, she sits there, cowering in a corner going, no, I'm not going to do it. And in regards to when the trap actually moves to realign itself because she now has to break her arm, she sits there and is like, no, please, no. It's really sad almost. I actually feel for Gabriella, a thing I'll talk about in a later video again. But here, it really works in the sense of Gabriella because it is a matter of, are you going to be able to think straight? Are you going to be able to think fast? Are you going to listen to the other people? Or are you going to trust your own instinct? Because me, personally, I would have broken my left arm first. My bones can heal, as Jigsaw says in the tape, but at the same time, if I break my arm, I drop down. The machine is hoisted in the ceiling. It's not going to fall down. It's not like I'm going to be sitting on the ground and still have to break my ankle. I'd be able to run around and avoid the radiation for fucking ages if that's the case. But it is a matter of trust your intuition and also think straight. If you don't do that, you will die and make mistakes. And that's essentially what happened to Gabriella. I like traps like this in all of the Saw movies, where it is like a choice within the choice. A choice within the choice of who lives and who dies, or the live or die, make your choice. Here, it is the fact of you choose to break your arm first or you choose to break your leg first, and whichever will really determine how long you are in the trap for. And given the circumstances, there is a lot of psychological shit going on in your brain right now and having to act fast and not waste any time to not hesitate. And I love that aspect of this trap, and that's why it's at number 4. I just think the other 3 traps are slightly stronger. Coming in at number 3 is probably one of the most difficult traps to finish in this movie, and that is the brain surgery trap. This is easily one of the most difficult traps to actually be successful in, I feel, but at the same time, it was marketed so heavily but didn't have the impact that I thought it would. It's still high on the list because I think it is a great fucking trap. But in the end, it just doesn't have the overall impact, and I'll talk about that now, as a matter of fact. But the victim of this trap is Mateo. He was one of the people who ended up conning Jigsaw. As you know, he actually works as seemingly an orderly at a vet clinic, like a veterinarian. Like, we see him before he is, drugged and kidnapped by Jigsaw and Amanda, that he is actually, cleaning a bathroom. Or, not a bathroom. He's cleaning more or less the administration area, or the front desk area, I should say, of the vet clinic and everything, the vet doctor. He's not a doctor of any sort. He's doing that to sort of provide drugs to Gabriella, and it's fascinating to me because with that, he lied to Jigsaw, and now he is in a trap where he has to perform brain surgery on himself. He either, in 3 minutes, by the way, he has to sacrifice a certain amount of his cerebral tissue into a little tank which will dissolve his brain matter in under 3 minutes. Otherwise, the mask on on the side of his device will close and essentially electrocute and fry him to death. He isn't successful, I'll point that out right now. He is not successful. He dies, but not from a really solid effort. The thing about this trap is that it is grueling. Knowing that you have to cut open your own skull and then fiddle around in your own brain, not knowing what it could do to you, because as John says, the brain is a very fascinating thing that can survive extreme trauma. There are gunshot victims, there are people who have been, hit really hard in the head with bats and hammers who have survived with little to no trauma whatsoever. Yet there are people who suffer lesser injuries who end up having much worse trauma consequences come of it in regards to functionality. The brain is an extraordinarily fascinating organ within the human body, and it is also the stem of what makes everything work alongside the heart. So I understand the hesitation side of things regarding this, and Mateo puts in a damn good fucking effort. He full on does carve open his skull, and the music that plays during this sequence is so metal and so fucking powerful. Like, very heavy drum beats, very heavy metallic beats, as a matter of fact, and it is awesome. Charlie Clouser really hit home with the score in this movie, especially this trap. Like, I can hear it playing out of my head right now. But the only thing that really doesn't drive it home is when he does open up the skull and he pulls it out. Like, it's disgusting. It looks like he's fiddling around with tweezers inside of a big jar of spaghetti. But the overall ending of the trap, like, I feel like if he did succeed, my opinion on this trap would be very different. Because it's like, he succeeded, I can't judge it on the end result, I won't do that. But here, him just being simply electrified to death, one, I love the tameness, so it's simple, but at the same time, it doesn't have the overall effect for a very grisly and grueling trap that we've witnessed for the last however amount of time. And people who are like online, this trap is impossible, bull fucking shit, it's impossible. He was literally seconds, maybe 5-10 seconds off of being successful. But the fact of the matter is, he waited until 1 minute and 30 seconds were left on the clock to actually start. He wasted 1 minute and 30 seconds on the clock hesitating and not acting whatsoever, even though Jigsaw literally says, don't hesitate. That's the only reason he failed. If he had 5 to 10 seconds more, he would have been more than successful. He was almost there to acquire that key to unlock the device and get out. But because of the 3-minute timer, he wasted 1.5 minutes of it. He did ultimately end up dying. Coming in at number 2, probably a very unpopular opinion, but the pipe bomb featuring Diego, who was not just the cab driver, but the guy who faked the surgery itself. The guy who had, this fake beard on and the mask and everything, was talking to John while pretending to put tweezers in his brain and cut open his skull to perform this miracle treatment on his brain. So he's just as much a part of the con as anyone else. And with that, I think it's a very, very fascinating fucking thing that Diego ends up being in probably one of the harder traps to achieve a successful victory over as well. Like, Diego is in a trap where he has 2 pipe bombs strapped to his arms, one at a time, one on this side, one at this side. I don't think that it's strapped underneath the bone, considering that he was able to sort of just peel it off of his skin. He didn't peel out of bone, so therefore I don't think it was attached to his bone whatsoever. It was just really, really deeply layered underneath his skin, flesh, and muscle. And his task with these 2 scalpels that are duct taped to his hand, he has to essentially hack into his arm. They won't cut through the wires, but they will cut through blood, flesh, and muscle and tissue to be able to essentially deglove his fucking arm to get these bombs off in under 3 minutes. He does waste a considerable amount of time, about 1:30, 1:45 seconds, but he is successful, especially when the adrenaline kicks in and he's just hacking at his arm, and it is a very grisly, very grueling trap. But the simplicity of the trap as well is something that I admire. It is very grisly, very gruesome, but something as simple as, let's duct tape scalpels to your hands, and then let's also put some bite bombs on your arms, and let's see you just hack up your arm and rip them off. Not only is the test extraordinarily difficult to be successful, but at the same time, Diego is successful. He does survive. And that is all the more testament to him and also the trap itself. And it does prove that even the most difficult of traps and the most difficult of tasks, if they are even, if they are fair still, one can actually succeed if they have the willpower to live. Not to mention, it also feels like a massive homage to Saw 2 Flesh and Blood with the slice. You know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I've got to sort of appreciate that side of things. But coming in at number 1 is going to be Valentina's The Wire Trap. The Wire as in the wire saw trap. The Jiggly Saw, which was created in such time by Leonardo Jiggly. John, I don't need the fucking history lesson, my guy. But the Jiggly Saw trap is easily my favorite trap in the entire movie. It's also the first trap of the main game. It sets a massive bar, like a really high bar in regards to what the traps in this movie were like, and I just don't feel like any trap that followed was able to live up to the overall gore, the overall task, the overall result, if anything. Valentina has to really, really subvert expectations here and really go beyond what her brain should be capable of doing, and that is the true will to live or die. And I feel like she did have the will to live. I don't think she wanted to die. She really tries here. She does die, but this is a trap where essentially, after applying a tourniquet to her leg, it is marked on her leg where she needs to hack off her own leg using a wire saw, a Jiggly Saw. And it's fascinating to me because she has to cut off her entire fucking leg and then grab this little suction tube and stick it inside the bone of her stump. Granted, it could have been a little bit easier if she had caught her leg, but who's thinking about catching their leg, their amputated leg, when they're cutting it off? And not to mention, I think her arms would still be a little bit preoccupied with hacking like this, but the way it's shot, the music involved, the blood, the gore, the cinematography, everything about it, the editing, the way that the actress who plays Valentina is doing this trap as well, where it goes from really fast and sporadic to almost like a rowboat sort of just hacking it like this. It's really gory and very uncomfortable to watch, but the result is so cool. And I think as a trap itself, it is once again fair. Like, Valentina wastes 1 minute and 15 seconds of her 3-minute timer. It's until 1 minute 45 seconds about, or that 1 minute 30 again, like Mateo, that she actually starts hacking off her own legs. She does hesitate a lot, but understandably, again, this is a matter of Jigsaw does encourage them not to hesitate, but she at the same time does hesitate, and therefore it results in her failure, because once again, seconds, I tell you, fucking seconds off of extracting enough bone marrow and she would have survived. But then we get to see the ultimate decapitation, and the way the body just folds and slumps after she is decapitated is really funny, but also really gross, and I kind of love it. But guys, what do you think of the list, and what is your list for ranking every single trap in Saw X? I want to see what you have to say down in the comment section below. I promise the Saw X spoiler review is coming eventually. I just want to see it a 5th time. Okay? 5th or 6th time before I actually, do that video, because I want to be sure about everything. I want to make sure I have everything right in my head and on my notes and everything while I discuss everything in spoilers and in-depth detail. So look out for that video coming as soon as possible, guys, as well as many other videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. Look out for more videos coming very soon. Make sure to click the subscribe button and the bell to get notified when new videos are up every single week, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.